So it's raining and almost nobody in the park, but I'm running. Rain doesn't stop me from jogging. Anyways, I am making some comedy characters on my YouTube channel in Japanese, and one of them is Dewa Nozaki. He's a senior high school student, and he makes certain appearances where the grown-up people are doing something stupid, like in the NHK newsroom where they broadcast news, like a publicity machine of the government, and where there's no criticism, no true journalism, and so this morning I let out a sketch where Dewa Nozaki makes certain appearance when the broadcaster NHK is broadcasting about the Tokyo Alert. This is a device conceived by Governor Yuriko Koike, and some people might think that it's a kind of a election campaign machine, because nobody knows the rigorous scientific background to this thing, in addition to the national state of emergency declaration. So Governor Koike always makes a really good publicity stunt, declaring now it's Tokyo Alert level this and level that and whatever. Now it's stage 2, stage 3, and nobody's sure if this is really effective. But the news outlet should at least examine something, some aspects of this thing. But NHK doesn't really treat it that way. NHK just assumes that Tokyo Alert is a real thing, and they just report on how small businesses and people are adapting to it, as if it was something like the weather. Hey, it's cloudy today, it's raining today, so we should probably bring an umbrella. This kind of attitude, as if government policies are something like the weather, which is a natural phenomenon which we cannot do anything about. So Dewa Nozaki makes a certain appearance, and he makes all these complaints to the NHK people live on air from the studio. That's an absurd assumption of this comedy sketch. But anyway, I'm having some following, small numbers, small viewing figures on my Japanese YouTube channel, cult channel. But anyway, this is just a small attempt at making some noise about the really sad status quo of Japan's supposedly public broadcaster. But looking at their performance, it appears that as if NHK is a state-owned media. Because there's no journalism there. Anyway, so Dewa Nozaki made a joke in that sketch about Mr. Minami, who is a very well-known weatherman. Maybe his weather forecast is much more enjoyable than the main news content of the NHK. So I'm doing these things on my Japanese YouTube channel, as a small contribution to my home country, because I do feel that the Japanese TV, do require a much, improvement. Otherwise, it's not sustainable in contemporary world.